You know the saying, if I told you, I'd have to kill you? Well, this particular person took that literally. If you come with me to New York in 1999, I will tell you all about it.
One of our young turned up last night. They found their body, but not their hearts. Somebody new must have gone bad. Where's the Lord to take care of that? Where's the Lord to take care of
Hey guys, thank you for joining me. You have reached True Crime's Coldest Winter, and I am Winter. I'm here to talk about the true crime cases that simply plagues me. It is difficult to truly know anyone, despite how close they are. From neighbors to our own family members, each and every one can hold a secret so dear to their hearts that not even the light of their lives know about it. Occasionally, these things are meaningless in the grand scheme of things, and others mean much more than we could ever fathom. Much more than we can ever fathom. Generally, the things that we don't see in others are fairly harmless, or more so overlooked than undisclosed. But with one woman, her benevolent facade would ultimately prove to be a red herring for a very dark secret. Madeline Carmichael was 60 years old. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, New York. She was well liked by the children in the neighborhood because she would exchange Christmas gifts with them in exchange for them to run errands. She acted as somewhat like an auntie to the children in the neighborhood. People found her to be nice and kind, maybe a little bit on the eccentric side. She wasn't visited very often by the family members in her family, except for one, Gregory Carmichael, who was 38 years old at the time, and he was her oldest son. She had a total of 4 children, but she didn't have contact with 3 of them. She had 2 of her children in foster care, her middle daughter Sabrina and her younger son Andre Carmichael. Her 4th child she sent to live down south. She was extremely poor back in the 80s. She was just unable to care for all 4 of her children at the time, so she just had to give them up. But it seemed that giving her kids up for adoption, it took a huge emotional toll on her. This caused a lot of her eccentricities in her personality. She once had a baby doll that she said she would never give away. Surprisingly, she ended up giving away the same baby doll that she claimed that she would never give up to Johanna Rivera, who was the superintendent of her apartment building. Madeline also often complained about the screams of a baby who just kept crying and screaming all day and all night. It kept her awake, and this was very concerning for her. She couldn't sleep. This baby just kept crying all the time, just driving her mad. But on the plus side, her youngest son, Andre, that she had given up for adoption, was actually looking to reconnect with her, was heavily looking for her. He hadn't seen her since he was a little boy. In October of 1999, he went to her apartment building, but she wasn't there. But he was able to speak to Johanna. He left her with his phone number, and she had promised to relay the message to Madeline. When Andre was 12 years old, before he was given up for adoption, a long-lost aunt had asked him if he had ever reconnected with his twin sister. At this time, he had no idea that he even had a twin sister. And he thought about it. He thought about it a lot. He asked his mother about it, and his mother had evaded the question. Not only did she ignore his question, but she went off to the side to have a little chit-chat with her oldest son, Greg, who was maybe about 28 at this time. And after this short little conversation with Greg, Andre just remembers being punched, being kicked, being thrown on the floor. That was it. It was never mentioned again. But the next year, on his 13th birthday, he asked his mother, Madeline, again, Madeline evaded his question again, saying that, son, when you get older, I will tell you. That way you'll understand more, be able to process things a little bit more. I'm assuming that's what she meant. Shortly after that, apparently $400 of Madeline and the family's rent money went missing, and this was actually blamed on Andre, and he was then shipped away to a foster parent because Madeline just couldn't afford to pay the rent. This had been weighing heavy on Andre's mind for years. He didn't have a memory before the age of 7 or 8, and he just didn't know about a twin sister, and it was kind of plaguing him a little bit. They placed him in foster care in 1988. Fast forward to 1999, he goes to her building, she's not there, but they reconnected. Madeline welcomed Andre into her home. Andre at this time had a 4-year-old daughter. His daughter, who he named Andrea, looked just like Andre. He had brought Andrea with him to his mother's house. That's her long-lost granddaughter. Andre wanted to bring, clearly, for obvious reasons. When Madeline had set eyes on Andrea, she became very disturbed. She was very uncomfortable. It was just a very awkward situation, to the point where not only did they leave, but Madeline told Andre, do not ever bring that little girl over here again. So that was a very, very awkward situation. When Andre and his other siblings were younger, they went through a lot of abuse growing up in the household. The abuse was not that severe, but it was very frequent. Apparently, Madeline would beat Andre with whatever she had in her hand. She would use a belt, she would use an electric wire, she would use a shoe, anything that she could get her hands on. Madeline also didn't let Andre out of her sight. She was always with Andre. Wherever he went, she went. Wherever she went, she was kind of on his back. The kids couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't have any friends either. She was a very strict disciplinarian type of parent. And she's a single mother with 4 kids, and then she sent one to live down south, and now she has 3 kids, and she's poor, and now she's dealing with people stealing money and all these things. Maybe she's just trying to keep some control in the household, maybe some structure. Madeline would cook the kids dinner. She never neglected them. She wouldn't send them to school in rags. That kind of balanced out the abuse, I guess. And another strange thing is that she was adamant about keeping the children away from a closet that was in the room. It always had something in front of it, whether it was a shelf or like a bookshelf, a bed. It was always in front of it, and if the kids went near it or tried to go inside, they would get severe beatings. This closet was just off limits completely and entirely in its entirety. And Madeline would also use Greg as kind of the enforcer, since he was the older brother. So she depended or used him to bully the younger kids into doing anything he said. She allowed Greg to beat up his younger siblings, not like on a sibling rivalry level, but more on we're strangers here, this is business, like stay away from this closet or I'm gonna rough you up. Really just trying to intimidate them. He was a few years older, and of course they're just like, hey, it's an abusive household. What can you say? Madeline used Greg to bully the kids. She would allow, typically parents would be like, no, don't bully, don't be mean. She's like, no, bully, be mean, it's okay, beat them up if you have to, just make sure that they keep them in check and keep them away from this closet. I hate people sometimes. So you can only imagine kind of the discord in the household, and in all honesty, with that being said, it's almost a good thing that the children were carted off to other families, because this family seemed a little bit on the dysfunctional and very abusive side. They're all gone, just, Madeline and Greg for now. Anyway, fast forward to 1999, and here Andre is. Hadn't seen his mother in years. He's still, over the years, he's just thinking about this twin sister that he allegedly has, that he didn't know he had. Not only does he want to reconnect with his mom, but he also wants to find out the truth about his sister. So in 1995, he connected with his older sister, Sabrina, and mentioned about his twin sister. Like, hey sis, do I have a twin sister? What's going on? Sabrina's like, don't know what you're talking about, dude. Gaslighting and stuff. He just kept thinking, why would my aunt say that? It's so sad. It really is. It's really sad. This is why I don't do cases with children, because it really makes me feel sad that people take advantage of people like that. You know, kids, it's just the types of people that we have in this cold, cruel world. I'll continue. He tries to reconnect. He brings over his granddaughter to his mother's. His mother is just all up in arms. And Madeline just keeps hearing this baby crying. It doesn't go away. You have Andre here trying to figure things out. You have Sabrina here trying to live a normal life. You have Greg here bowing down to his mother. And it's just, Madeline just can't seem to find peace in her life because this baby is just, all day, every day. Can we get this baby from crying? That would have been all good and well, but the thing is that there was no baby in that building. The neighbors didn't hear anything. Neighbors couldn't hear a baby crying. Why couldn't they hear a baby crying? Because there was no baby. That's a little strange. Andre had this very awkward run-in with his mother, so he goes back to his sister and says, hey sis, look, do I have a twin sister? She ends up breaking down, bawling into tears. Yes, you do have a sister, but I can't tell you anything. He's like, dude, you have to tell me. You've got to tell me. Like, please, I need this. And Sabrina says, well, I can tell you, but you have to sign this contract that states that you will not tell anyone because my life is at stake. My life is in danger. We can't afford for our family to be in shambles over this. And so Andre says, okay, I'm gonna hire a private investigator to find her. And she says that if you sign this contract, I'll tell you. He signs the contract. Then she says that there's no use in getting a private investigator because our sister, Latanisha, is dead. Andre's like, what do you mean she's dead? Back in 1979, when Latanisha was 3 years old, and Andre, because that's his twin sister, she one day had upset Madeline, her mother, very much because she had vomited on herself, and this sent Madeline spiraling because she beat Latanisha severely. And then here comes Greg and all of his, here he comes. These two very sadistic characters beat on this little 3-year-old child to the point where she could no longer move. They beat her to death. And on top of that, they tried reviving her unsuccessfully. What they did was they had put Latanisha in a bag and then put her in a trunk of their car for a little while until they figured out what to do with her. Then they ended up taking her out of the trunk, tucking her away, and then just keeping her there, wherever they lived. And this was all done in front of Sabrina. Sabrina got beat so bad. If you tell anybody, you better not tell anybody. It was a very bad situation. That was when Madeline decided that she would start putting her kids in foster care because that would explain for why Latanisha had disappeared. She would tell people, hey, I'm too poor to take care of my kids, so I sent Sabrina here to this foster home. I sent Andre here to this foster home. And I sent Latanisha to the South area to go live with whoever in the South. Nobody ever questioned. Nobody ever wondered, hey, whatever happened to so-and-so? Because the story was already done. But what people didn't know was that Latanisha was actually under the same roof as them the entire time. Latanisha went nowhere.